Hey guys, I'm Justin from Core Performance, and welcome to our second communications video. For those of you that have been with us for a couple of years, you remember a couple years ago, Will and I did a video together on how to mount comms in kit. And so today we're going to bring you a different video that a lot of our customers have been asking for, that frankly a lot of us members of the team have been asking for. A lot of people in the market really have a big interest in this, which is, you know, if you were using a radio in a professional capacity before, military or law enforcement, we were given those radios, right? We were taught how to operate them, but somebody else set up the infrastructure, set up the radio itself, then we were just given a unit and we were told how to operate it, and then we went to work, right? But now, with a lot of us no longer doing those jobs professionally, how do you set up and replicate your own capabilities? Well, today we're going to answer all of those questions. We're going to give you lists of what to buy, and we're going to teach you step by step for how to set it up. And for all that, Will has come back and graciously joined us from Michigan here at our Knoxville, Tennessee HQ2. So thank you again, Will, for coming back, and we really appreciate it. And so let's get started right now.
We're taking a quick moment to shout out our new ammo sponsor, AmmoMan.com. If you're looking for a reliable, hassle-free way to get your ammo fast, AmmoMan.com has you covered. Here's the deal. They offer free shipping on orders over $99 and only list items that are in stock. So if you see it on their site, it's ready to go. No back orders, no delays. Plus, when you set up an account, you'll earn 2% back on every $100 spent and a faster checkout once you're verified. AmmoMan.com isn't just about ammo. They're backed by real shooters with excellent customer service from actual people. Whether you reach out by phone or email, their team is there to make sure you're taken care of. Depending on when you place your order, you could have your package in just a couple of days. If you're shopping smart, AmmoMan.com is your go-to. Reliable stock, great service, and a team that loves shooting as much as you do. Check them out via links in the video description. Now let's get back to the video.
The radio is the heart of any communication system, and that of course begs the question, well, where do we get started? Well, Will's been gracious enough to bring a number of different options to share with the audience here, and it looks like you've got some more beginning all the way up through some more advanced options. So Will, can you kind of take us through these to help the audience understand the pros and cons of each one to help them determine which is best for their application?
Yeah, absolutely. So we start out with some beginner radios. These are more, you find them from China. The Baofangs, the Qshangs, Yaesu makes some more higher end models. These are just very basic radios, great to learn on, great to start, and they still have some capabilities. Right here we have some more advanced options, and these would be stuff that holds encryption. So we have a Motorola that has frequency hopping, and then we have an E.F. Johnson that actually holds AES encryption keys.
Wow. And
then advanced, we have a 152, which is that's more out of the scope of what we as civilians want to utilize, but it still has a lot of capabilities.
Okay, so you had mentioned that first radio here, Baofeng and some other manufacturers. These are all made in China, right?
For the most part, yes.
Okay, so there's obviously been a lot of talk. China's in the news all the time lately with all types of security concerns, right? Both national and also individual as citizens, as consumers. Do we have any security concerns to worry about since these are obviously made in China and these are communications devices?
For the most part, no. There are DMR radios that utilize in GPS, and that's something we really don't need to worry about. But these do mainly are point-to-point, and they do have repeater options. So for the most part, there is no connection.
Okay, and then you had also mentioned some of these middle tier options have frequency hopping. So for those members of our viewing audience that don't know what frequency hopping is, can you kind of share a little bit more about that and what why we might have an interest in frequency hopping? So
frequency hopping is an awesome way to give you some more privacy in the civilian world. It is a legal form of encryption, and it jumbles up frequencies and then packs them up, sends them to you. You take those jumbled up and unpack them.
Now, will frequency hopping help with direction finding or location tracking or anything like that?
None of that. That's just for security.
It's just for a basic level of encryption.
Exactly. And for an example, in the military, on a 152, we use frequency hopping along with encryption keys as a double layer of security.
Got it. Okay, and so now you had mentioned that is present in this third radio here, right? Both frequency hopping and encryption?
This one only has encryption, and this one you can develop your own encryption keys with a little bit of homebrew, and then you have even more security capabilities.
Very cool. And now that we've covered radios, we're going to move on to antennas. Okay, so let's get to antennas. Now, it looks like you brought a lot of different options here. Can you walk us through each one and help the audience understand why they might want to consider upgrades or switching antenna types?
Yeah, absolutely. So here we have a cattail antenna, wearable antenna on the 152. This is great for team internal use, talking to aircraft. If you want pure performance, we always advise to get your standard OEM whip antenna high in the air. Moving along, we have something like a relocation cable. So a wearable antenna and a relocation cable are a great way to increase mobility. And if you want to keep some capabilities of a standard stick antenna, you can get a relocation cable like here. Something like this stubby, this is a great way to increase mobility. And this is something that would work on a high UHF radio like this. Now, sizes on antennas all are based on the frequency range. So anyone saying a longer antenna is better, it just doesn't know better. It just depends on what frequencies you're running on.
So where would you want a longer antenna versus where would you want a shorter antenna?
Usually something more in the HF world. Those are more, you see larger antennas, field expedient, large ones. Something like this is a great antenna by ZMB2, and this is a flexible, and so it's kind of a middle ground between a wearable and a flex.
Okay, and what frequencies are running on that radio?
These would be for GMRS frequencies, which you commonly see in the civilian world.
Okay, and so for GMRS, an antenna like this is kind of ideal?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and then so with these wearable antennas, you had mentioned that picks up more mobility. Can you kind of explain how that happens? Because this is obviously, you're taking away a whip antenna, right, and replacing it with a wearable?
Exactly. So if you need to get in and out of a vehicle, work on a casualty, raise your rifle, you have that large antenna sticking up somewhere in this region of your body.
So this is basically a way to eliminate a large snag hazard.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, but the price that you're going to pay for eliminating that snag hazard is range?
Sometimes a small amount of capability you do lose. That's why we advertise these for team internal, and then talking to aircraft usually is the advised platform for that.
Okay, so for those of us that are having a hard time reconciling, so usually aircraft, that sounds like it's really far away, right? But it's not? That's still considered fairly easy for a wearable antenna?
Yes, it is. We have a lot of JTACs that use these to great effect. It's all in the UHF spectrum, and these are tuned for UHF, and they perform really well.
Okay, and so what about with the wearable with the antenna relocation? Like, where would you use, what's an application where you'd want to use that?
Maybe if you're a team leader, squad leader, you need to push out a little bit further. We advise these. If your radios are a little bit more sensitive, they need, to have pure performance, but you still want a little bit of mobility. This is a great solution for that because you get to keep the capabilities of your stick tuned antenna. And
that gives you a little bit more range?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and now what about this stubby antenna here? So this stubby antenna, like, why would I choose a stubby? Help us understand, when would I choose a stubby versus when would I choose a wearable?
The answer is frequency range. So this radio is 800 to 900 megahertz, and that allows you to use something small like this. Think about your cell phone. That uses a frequency range that's pretty high up,
okay,
and that antenna is integrated into it and very small.
And so what are the frequency ranges of, say, this Harris versus that's an EF Johnson, right?
Yes, so the EF Johnson, they make them in different models. This is a UHF model, and then this one, the 152, would go 30 to 512 megahertz.
Wow, okay, so a lot of things to consider when it comes to the antenna.
There are.
So now that we've got the radio and the antenna squared away, the next big question we're going to tackle is, what do I do with a push-to-talk? So PTTs, or push-to-talks, are widely known as the best way to achieve some type of hands-free operation of your radio or communication system. But where do you start with a PTT? There's so many options. People see so many different things on social media. Will, you brought 3 PTT options with us today. Can you kind of walk us through each one and help us understand, why we might want to pick one versus another?
Yeah, absolutely. So that would depend on the radio you're using. If you're using a military radio, you don't need an amp push-to-talk.
And what does that mean, an amped push-to-talk?
The radio itself is going to amplify the audio into your headset. Something like these Chinese radios, you need to find a custom-made push-to-talk that will amplify the audio for you.
Got it. Okay, and now who makes PTTs that amplify the signal and who makes PTTs that do not amplify the signal?
So there's a lot of companies that make them for the military, and those are more on the pricey side for the 152s and your police radios. There's a lot of smaller shops that make them for the Chinese radios, like Aries Communication.
Got it. And so can you take us through each of the 3 different PTTs that we have on screen here?
Absolutely. So back here we have a U94. This is very common. You've seen this in early GWatt up until now because they work. And this
does this amplify?
This does.
It does.
And it's on a 152 as we see right here. This has a 6-pin connector that goes right into the push-to-talk. And this one actually has a shroud here to protect you from bumping it.
Okay. Cool, and we're going to share a hack on the shrouds and everything with the audience later. Right?
We are,
okay.
Yep.
Cool, and now, so what do we have on the table here?
So we have a Silinx push-to-talk, and that's a really common company. They make a lot of variations for Motorola's, the E.F. Johnson. If you have a really odd radio, they likely make a variant for you.
And now, for this E.F. Johnson, do you need a PTT that amplifies or does not amplify?
I believe this is an amplified one.
Okay, and then what do you have next to that?
Next, we have what we commonly call a cop mic, and that's a push-to-talk, but you're not in a headset, so you actually have that on your body, and the audio is coming from the actual mic.
So
itself.
super important distinction there, right? Because a lot of people probably just think that these are PTTs, but in fact, a PTT, a cop mic is also another form of PTT.
I mean, you are pushing it.
You are pushing it, and you are talking into it.
Exactly.
Right. Now, why would you want, let's say, a cop mic versus, say, one of these other PTTs?
I think cost would be a big factor. How many people you have you're trying to outfit, but ease of use. You may have individuals on your team that don't have expensive headsets, and then this is a much easier way to deploy with a large team that just you don't know their gear loadout.
Got it. Okay. Now, what about if I was concerned about my audible signature or something like that? Can I plug an earpiece into a PTT?
Most do include a jack for an earpiece, and then as you know, being a law enforcement officer, you're constantly adjusting that knob for the situation you're in. So that's something you just got to train on, just like anything else.
Got it. Awesome. And do we have to worry about, like, are all these PTTs compatible with all these radios?
They're not. They all have different pin styles. They're all very varying.
Okay, so can you walk us through the different pin styles for each of the 4 radios that we have here?
Yeah, absolutely. So this one has it has what we call a wide 2-pin.
Okay.
This Motorola, they look very similar, but it's a narrow 2-pin, commonly called a Motorola 2-pin. This one, I believe, is called a 8-pin. It has a large side connector, and then a military radio like this has a 6-pin. And the interesting thing is there's 6 pins, but only 5 are for the audio portion. The 6th is for when you load encryption into the radio. So it's a 2-part system.
So when we're shopping for a PTT, we want to shop by pin connector?
Yes, and the style of radio and if it amplifies or not.
Got it. So those are the 3 critical criteria.
Yes.
So pin count or pin style,
yep.
Right? And then amplified or non-amplified, and then
money in your wallet.
And then what your budget is.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, that's going to do it on PTTs. That's awesome. Well, now that we've got PTTs covered, where do we connect a PTT? Okay, so now that we have the PTT covered, the big question is, what do we connect to the PTT? And the answer most often seen is a headset. Now, why would you use a headset? You want to use a headset for clear and concise communications in high noise environments, right? So anytime we're wearing, kit like this IcePlate Exo Gen 3, a chest rig, something where you would use, a gun belt, where you would use a communication system like this, high probability this is going to be a very high noise environment, right? Well,
definitely.
Okay, so what are our different headset options, and how do we connect one of these fancy looking headsets to one of these cool PTTs?
So you have what's called a down lead, and that's what's going to connect into your push to talk. It's very important for donning your helmet off. You're going to need to remove that down lead. And a great thing about these two, these cancel noise and amplify noise. So like you said, in those loud environments, these are pretty mission critical.
And so, are there different types of down leads? Do all of these headsets work with all the PTTs?
For the most part, most manufacturers are using the same style jack.
Okay, and what type of jack? Does the audience need to know, is there a specific jack type, or are you just buying, when you shop for a down lead, you shop for a down lead?
It's going to be pretty much the same with all these headsets you find.
So there's nothing really that tricky about connecting a headset to
No, that's the easy part.
Cool, well that's awesome, that's very, very helpful. So now that we have established PTTs, how they work, and we have plugged a headset into those PTTs, the next big question is, how do we mount that headset? Okay, so Will, you want a headset for high noise environments like we talked about, but how do we wear and integrate this headset with our kit?
This is another question that answered with money, and depending on what you have.
Okay.
So if you don't have arms to mount it the way that's desirable, you can move around your helmet pads.
And what is that desirable? That's mounting arms, that's taking your headset and mounting it directly to your helmet?
Exactly, using the rail space.
Okay.
And if you don't have that, you can move around your pads and actually put the headset underneath and then put your helmet on top.
So why would you want to do the arms versus wearing the headset underneath your helmet?
That would be funding. That would be if you're just starting out and you haven't upgraded to arms yet. Maybe you have a new type of headset that doesn't really have arms out yet, but that's more what you're looking at.
Got it. Okay, so you could, with with wearing the headset underneath your helmet, you do have to be conscientious about moving your pads around to adjust for that, right?
You do, or else it's just going to be sitting on top.
And so that's just a lot of trial and error.
Exactly.
And so how do you figure out, if I have, let's say, these OpsCore amps that we've got here, how do I know what type of arms to use for that in my helmet?
So that's going to have to come down to personal research. There's just so many options out there. There's some manufacturer-specific ones, and then there's some small-time companies that are finding solutions.
Well, and which one? So you want to basically type in what the type of headset you have, and then the connection that you're looking for.
Yes, and then combine, and then you'll find a solution to put it on your helmet via the rails.
Okay. So now that we've got all of our setup kind of configured, we're going to need to know how to maintain that setup, and for that, we've got to address the critical issue of batteries and charging. So Will, can you kind of walk us through some of the basics about how many batteries do we need, what type of batteries are we buying, how many chargers? This doesn't have to be that complicated, right? I mean, this has got to be pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else that requires a battery. You need to know what your mission is. Are you going to Disney World, or are you going on a full op, out in the jungle? What you like to see is a radio that includes a USB-C charger, so you don't have to bring a base station charger with you, or if you lose it, that could be something to consider. Some radios you actually have to swap by taking it apart and putting a battery in. These are all things you just need to look into when you're purchasing a radio.
How many batteries should I buy for my radio?
That really depends. I like to have a few extra, and I like to mark them and date them so I know when they're going to expire eventually.
Got it. So a good rule of thumb if you're getting into radios is to have what, at least 2 batteries? Do you want 4?
I think 2 is a good starting point, and then move on from there depending on what your mission is.
Okay, cool. And so where can I deal with some shorter battery life, and where would I want more extended battery life?
If you're leaving your radio on longer, you would want it obviously a larger battery. If you're doing what's called comm windows, where we're going to communicate, let's say, every 30 minutes, you don't have to worry so much about battery life.
Because you're turning your radio on and off.
Exactly, it's being shut off.
Awesome. Cool, so we've got our comm system powered up and sustainable, and now we're going to talk about the trickiest part of all, programming and software. Okay, so our final section now is on programming and software, and this is probably the trickiest section of all, right? So, Will, can you kind of talk us through the basics of programming your radio and what software you need to do that?
No, absolutely. So for some situations, you don't even need software. Oh. That's what we call hand jamming. So that's when you're actually punching in the frequencies. And then a civilian radio like this, you could use a program called Chirp. It's a free to download program, and you just need a cheap cable. Most radios actually come with it. If you have a Motorola, luckily they set up infrastructures to have programs that actually come with the radios now.
So what are some scenarios for what are you programming your radio with, and why would you want to do that?
So it could be frequency, it could be your encryption. There's a bunch of different factors what you're plugging in. Some people want, when the radio starts up, no noise or no backlight. Those are all options you can program in, and usually that has to be done with the software. Okay, and so the software is going to be dependent on your specific radio? Exactly. And now, okay, big other simple questions, right? Do I need a PC or a Mac? You can probably use both now. I mean, yeah, there's ways to do it. And do I need specific software on those computers to be able to do this? And if so, what are those softwares? You really don't need, you need specific for the radio. Other than that, you probably need a computer that's past Windows 94. Okay, so do these radios come with that software, or are customers going to have to go out and acquire that for themselves? The manufacturer usually says, here's a download link, and then that's how you find it. There's a lot of great resources. A lot of people, even on Instagram, that have the software that are kind of hidden away that they pass on to people. And so do we have a lot of those links we can provide to the audience? It's all going to be here. Okay, very, very cool. Awesome, hope that was really, really helpful for you guys. And so now, I'm going to hand it off to Will, who's going to provide you guys with an equipment list, some additional resources, and get super granular on the setup to get you guys squared away. Will, take it away.
Shout out to our friends at TA Targets, built right here in the USA by like-minded patriots. TA Targets brings you portable, durable, and innovative steel target systems designed to elevate your training. Whether you're on the range refining your skills or pushing your limits in drills, TA Targets delivers reliable performance that's made to last. Upgrade your training toolkit with targets you can trust. Visit TATargets.com, and don't forget to follow them on Instagram at TA Targets to stay up to date on their latest products. All right, guys, so we're going to be discussing now integrating the radio into your kit and then not integrating it into your kit. So if you needed to hand it off this radio to someone on your team, a family member, anyone that needs to communicate, this is the ideal setup. So we have a ZBRM2 stick antenna. They don't need a kit to use this. They can just hold it and it works totally fine. And then we have a cop mic push to talk attached. You can use it with or without the cop mic. And what's cool is if they want to then integrate this into their kit, they would just quick detach
the BNC antenna, and then they could put something like a wearable antenna on, remove that push to talk. Remember, it's still functional as it is right now, and put a push to talk for a headset. And like we discussed before, this is amplified, so this will work with your standard military headsets. All right, so now we're going to be talking about mounting your radio to your kit and streamlining it. You can think of the radio as the heart of your communication system. You can think of all the cabling as the veins, and then running up to your brain, you have the headset. So here at the heart, we have it mounted in a radio case that can be mounted in the front of the cummerbund or behind the cummerbund. Now that really depends on if you have side armor, what type of cummerbund you're running. There's a lot of different factors. I prefer it out front, but when you have it up front, there's more bulk forward, so I like to have all the cables to relocate everything so you don't have the antenna stick in your face. So our push to talk is currently mounted. It goes neatly underneath. It doesn't interfere with our magazines, and it's mounted right here, our U94. Then our down lead from our helmet and our headset go right down in. And then we have a cattail V2 relocation cable going straight up. On the side here, we have a ice flask in its holster. Now that we could move, we could swap, or we could put the ice flask on the back end and have a dual comm setup. Also, we might have different size pouches. There's different radios out there. You want to put the right pouch to the right radio you got. So let's flip over to the back. All right, so now we're on the beautiful back end of the IcePlate EXO Gen 3, and we can see our relocation cable going down the side, going through these nice laser cuts, removing a snag hazard by actually weaving them, coming up, and then mounting them with one wrap. We actually have two pieces here. You can use zip ties, tape, anything to hold this blade antenna still. Now, one thing to consider, whether you're using a standard antenna or one of my wearable antennas, you do not want a water source smushed in between. So our IcePlate and our IMS Pro is here in the back, so we don't have to worry about that. But if we mounted it here, you would want to mount it over the IMS Pro. You wouldn't want it to be in between because water does interfere with radio communications. Now, not everything in the communication world has to be purchased. Sometimes you got to make it yourself, and necessity is the mother of invention. So when I was in the Marine Corps, I had to make some of my own things. This was actually a Army-issued 3-magazine pouch for an AR-15 or an M4, and I Gorilla Glued the sides so it holds a 152. It has seen better days, obviously, but and then I used Army-issued boot bands and hand sewed on the elastic latch. Now this is a Thule card holder. So Thule cards are used for putting information down pen to paper, and then you can easily make a clean slate with it. So if I needed to do a Casevac 9 line, call for fire, do a personal report, I could all keep it docked in and have it easily accessible on my chest, just like that. These were just things that just didn't exist when I was in, but I saw that there was a need for them. Now, on my 2017 deployment, we were in vehicles a lot, so I realized those long whip antennas were a big impedance to operations. So I developed the very first cattail antenna, and this is it right here. So this original cattail antenna, this is essentially a field expedient antenna, and anyone can make one, and I even encourage some of my customers to make them themselves if they can. It's just not going to be as durable as what we sell on our website. If you have the right materials and you know what frequency ranges you're operating on, you can make your version of a wearable antenna. Now I have a few other little projects we're going to touch on that are a little bit easier and maybe more applicable to the common audience. Let's check them out. So here are two easy to do homebrew mods. Some push-to-talks actually don't have a button protector, so you can make your own. You just got to take a water bottle cap, drill a little hole, place it there. You can use glue if you want it to be a little more sturdy, but here all we did was use tape, and you can use electrical tape, hockey tape, whatever you got on hand. And this works really well. It holds up and it keeps you from bumping that push-to-talk. Something like this, if you're transporting connectors and they're sensitive items, they can be bumped or broken. We built a little protective case, and this is with a Grizzly dip can. So we just cut a slit in the side of the plastic, placed the connector in, and close it up. And then if you're a coward, you can also do it with a Zinn can. So these are really basic. Don't be intimidated of making your own things and making it work. If something like this broke, then you can go out and buy an upgrade. But in the meantime, you can make your own stuff. Now, one of the most important pieces of equipment to have with your radio and your entire kit is what's called a smart pack. So these can be made yourself, or they can be purchased from companies like Mad Gear Co. So this has stuff like your call sign, frequencies for other stations. It has your challenge and pass, really sensitive information, but it is something crucial to pass out to your guys and have them understand how important and sensitive it is. Now, the question everyone wants to know is what radio to buy. So I've talked to a lot of communicators in the industry, a lot of them specializing in outfitting military, police, and more importantly, civilians, you guys watching the video. We've decided to do beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Now, it all depends on a lot of different factors, and we've thought that through in the list. There's terrain, there's the amount of people you have in your group, there's the cost, there's the availability. Just to give you an example, in the beginner, we have more GMRS, FRS, kind of your walkie-talkie style radios. They have a lot of capability, but they're on the cheaper end, lower IP settings. Then we have stuff that's intermediate, and that would be DMR. That would be radios that have encryption, frequency hopping. We're getting more into that. And then the advanced would be things that if you got Gucci money, you might want to spend, and that would be a Motorola APX or Harris 152. It just really depends. Maybe even the Wave mesh system radios. All right, guys, so that was a list of radios. Please do your own research. More importantly than the equipment, though, is the training. So I've compiled a big list of guys that are on Instagram, they're on YouTube. You can actually talk to them in the DMs. They help me with this list a lot as well. They offer online training, they offer in-house training, they offer consulting. So please contact these guys, check out their resources.
Okay, guys, so that is the basics for what to buy when it comes to your radios and your comm setup, and how to actually build it all, get it set up, get it programmed, get it squared away, and get it running. We hope you guys have really enjoyed this. If you have questions, which are probably inevitable, okay, Will's gonna be monitoring the comment sections so that we can kind of help you guys get squared away with anything that's outstanding. Drop those comments below. Let us know what radio setup you're gonna be running and on what kit you're gonna be running it. And until then, stay frosty.